Okay, so Welcome to Derry episode 7 has one of the most horrifying moments I've seen on TV in a long time. Fans of Stephen King's book will know this is a major section outside of the Losers Club story. Told to us as Mike's father lies in his deathbed, we learn it's something he's kept from his son for years and years. However, it's in his dying days he finally reveals the truth. Now I know the phrase, the book was better, is often a term that gets banded around quite a lot. Films and TV shows, they just don't have the capacity to match the extensive amount of things that you can fit inside a book. A novel allows you to hear characters' thoughts, and books aren't really restricted by runtime. There's no budget as well. Your imagination is what does the work. Often you'll imagine things a certain way, and it'll be far more vibrant than what someone's able to pull off in real life. The actors aren't how you imagine them, media is restricted by that budget, and yeah, it can be difficult for things to live up to your mind. To be honest, this was always something I worried was gonna happen with the Blackspot. In the book, the bar is descended upon by the Legion of White Decency, who are all wearing KKK robes. So in the trailers, when I saw the gang rocking up in plastic Halloween masks, I did kind of think they might be cheaping out. However, I think the scene we get in episode 7 goes far beyond anything in the text. Throughout this video, we're going to be discussing this incredible moment and why it's so horrifying and devastating. If you're new here though, I'm Paul and this is the Heavy Spoilers Show, and here we talk about movies and TV shows every single week. If that sounds like something that you're into, please hit the subscribe, and yeah, let's get into the video.
Take my hand. I know a way out.
Okay, so though it primarily focuses on the Loser Club, in the fictional town of Derry, we do get interludes that help break up the story. Amid the novel's tapestry of fear, there's one scene that stands out for its visceral blend of historical atrocity and otherworldly dread. That is, of course, the fire at the Blackspot. Now, to me, this incident is something that really exemplifies why it transcends your typical monster tale. The Blackspot terror lies not in just its gore of jump scares, but in its masterful fusion of racial violence, a community turning on itself, paranoia, suspicion, destruction, and death. Ultimately, it's a scene that's about the worst that's in humanity, and Pennywise just happens to be there. Now, in order to understand the terror behind the Blackspot, we first have to look at Derry's cursed history. In the novel, the Blackspot's a makeshift nightclub established by black soldiers stationed nearby at the Derry Army base. During this era of rigid military segregation in the United States, black servicemen were barred from socializing with their white colleagues. Thus, they were given this refuge, a sort of sanctuary where they could be themselves and just enjoy life. In the book, it transformed into a vibrant bar that was a haven for music and dancing. This is much like what we saw in episode 6, with it seeming like a great hangout. However, to the white people in the town, the Blackspot became a symbol of defiance. In the novel, King draws from real historical tensions and uses this as a way to flesh out the horror. Lynchings, assaults, and arson attacks were commonplace at the time, and society had a constant undercurrent of violence, which applies perfectly throughout this episode. Now, the show takes things up a notch, and it also has it acting as a hiding spot for Hank. Suspected of killing the kids at the Capitol Cinema, the city's turned towards vigilante justice. This is somewhat history repeating itself, and it also happened in the previous cycles. There, the Bradley gang rolled into town and were eventually gunned down by the citizens themselves. Violence and anger were rising, and thus people took things into their own hands. That's sort of what's happening here, with it being a hunt for Hank. However, the irony is that they kill far more people than they suspected Hank of doing. In the middle of the night, they roll in wearing masks, which are all the faces of different monsters. This is very important, as some of these creatures are what it manifests as in the book. There, the text talks about the idea of evil and how it could all be this one thing wearing a different face depending on who it appears to. The evil is the same here though, with it not necessarily mattering who's under the mask, but rather the evil that's pushing it. Now, the standoff at the start is extremely tense, with them holding the patrons at gunpoint. Though they say they're after Hank, there's also clearly anger towards the patrons themselves. One lets Norma Price go free because they have a personal connection, but they don't really view the others as being people. This is a bunch of cowards who all hide behind masks, and what they do next really cements their nature. They barricade the door and then set fire to the building before indiscriminately shooting those inside. Now, this is a scene that I never thought they could really replicate on film. The novel is awash with descriptions and things that just make you feel the fire as you read it. However, I genuinely think that Muschietti and the creative team take things to the next level. Presenting the entire scene as a one-er, we follow the carnage inside without cutting. It leaves us as an audience feeling like we're trapped in there with the characters, and it's such a great touch that adds to the chaos. The fire begins to build more and more, and we watch in real time as it gets worse and worse. People are getting shot as we follow the characters through, and it's absolutely terrifying. What's worse is that we know the characters have very little chance of surviving. From the off, they let you know the doors are locked, and those who make it out are instantly gunned down. A subtle detail I think really adds to this moment is that we also know how positive the Blackspot was. This was a safe space that's now been flipped on its head, and at this point, it's the most dangerous place in Derry. Now, to make matters worse, we have two major things that happen which make things even more hopeless. The first is the desertion of Dick, who desperately flees to save his own skin. In the book, they talk about how Dick led people out, and he was able to do this through his psychic abilities. That's what we see in full effect, with him racing to move a fridge out the way to basically burrow through the floors. Dick is kind of being a dick and basically ditching everyone to get himself out of there. However, he hears Ronnie crying for her father, and this is what makes him take a second look. It's in this that he sees the war chief, and it's through this that he has a change of heart. Here's a character who stood up to Pennywise and basically contained the creature in order to save others. She gave up her life so others could have theirs, and this kind of shakes Dick out of his apathy. It's something that'll be instrumental to saving Danny, and he'll head miles and miles and miles and miles and miles in The Shining just to get back to the Overlook. So it is a bit positive, but seeing him rush out was like, oh, goddamn. However, what isn't is the arrival of Pennywise. Waltzing through the fire and offering his hand, he makes an unforgettable entrance. Ending up with face on his face, he just heightens the horror inside the Blackspot. Not only do we have the gunman outside, but they're now trapped in the fire along with this monster. Now in the book, it appears as a giant bird that swoops down and grabs the survivors outside. However, I think having Pennywise is a much better way to take things. We're actually working on a breakdown of it chapter 2, and one of my biggest complaints is that they don't really use Pennywise that much. I know the creature is formless and it makes sense to have it appearing as lots of different things, but let's be honest, mate. We all want to see Pennywise. I was even a bit worried there that the series might end up doing the same thing, especially as like the creature doesn't really appear until like episode 5. However, they've turned up the Skarsgård and are now footing the bill, eh? I'm so glad that they chose to go with the clown, and in this scene, he just delivers the insanity. Seeing him standing there mocking Dick while cackling madly is way better than Big Bird just coming in and grabbing people. Now, I think what they do creatively at this point is genius, and it's here that we cut to the outside. Perfectly juxtaposing the horror and chaos inside, we see Bowers smugly standing there calmly watching his work. There's no panic and just a sense of pride across his face that highlights the horrors that exist within humans and Derry itself. We hear the screams inside, and the true terror is he just stands there watching. Now, throughout our videos, we've often talked about how it is basically a metaphor for abuse and how reports of it are often ignored by authority figures. And yeah, over the last couple of years, we've seen lots of times where lots of people have come together and talked about how there's one person who's abused them all. For years and years, it got completely ignored, and there was one thing behind the evil that was causing so much pain. But people didn't just pay attention to it. Bowers is the chief of police, was the chief of police, but the fact he's doing stuff like this shows exactly why the town's the way it is. Evil wins here because it's allowed to. The people in power participate in it and are as much of a destructive force as Pennywise is. But I do think that it gets through to some. We know from the book that in the aftermath of this attack that the town turned a corner. People came together to help the survivors, and hospital fees were either waived or paid for by donors. The town came together to make things right, and it was the thing that turned everything around. We kind of see this in Phil's dad as well, who's clearly looking devastated about what he's done. He's fallen victim to the manipulation of others and has carried out evil in their name. The town's apathy towards crimes like this enables the entity to flourish, and it makes human flaws complicit in the cosmic evil. And sadly, it's at this point that we get one of the most devastating moments I've seen in a long time, mate. Cutting back inside, we see Dick leading people out, and he goes back for Richie and Marge. However, the roof collapses and the pair are stuck inside. Rich then directs Marge to a fridge and tells her they can both hide inside. However, it's clear he knows there's only room for her. Marge realizes this upon climbing in, and he stands and takes one last look at her before then closing the lid. And it completely tears you apart, you son of a bitch, Muschietti. I forgave you for the flash, but fuck you for killing Rich. Now, in our videos, we've often talked about how the best action scenes are always driven by emotion and not necessarily action. For example, the start of that Mission Impossible movie with the plane, absolutely incredible stunt, yeah, brilliant. But I always felt like something was lacking due to it not really having any emotional drive to it. No Time to Die gets a lot of crap, but I think the opening of that has way more weight because the characters are driven by emotion rather than just an action scene happening. Sure, there's action as well, but the characters aren't doing it to just do it. Bond is wrestling back and forth over paranoia, who to trust, and also the feeling of betrayal from Vesper that he's just been reminded of. That's now shown again potentially in Madeline, and though as this explosion's happening, crazy stunts, at the core of the scene is the relationship between the pair. And yeah, I don't want to crap on a Mission Impossible either, because those films are great, but I think the action's always stronger when you have characters driven by emotion. And even in that franchise, for as good as that plane scene is, there's better action scenes that are driven by emotion. Like that scene in Mission Impossible 3 where Philip Seymour Hoffman's got the wife at gunpoint. That's just tense, and it's very, very simple. Now, applying this to the show, in this moment, it's basically just a kid lying on top of a fridge. But because of the emotional stakes in it, it just tears you apart. It's heartbreaking. Rich is fighting for everything so Marge can simply survive. This is what makes his sacrifice mean even more. As an audience as well, we want these characters to be together, but this tragic event is tearing them apart. I also think it's so easy to put ourselves in his shoes as well. He recounts a tale of the first time he saw her and how he thought of all the things he should have said to sound cool. I think we've all been in that situation, and I was watching this scene remembering it myself. I won't say because my wife might watch these, but yeah, when I was a kid, there was someone I liked, said something, I fumbled the ball, and then spent probably months later thinking about the thing I should have said. Rich here gets to deliver though what that thing would have been, and what makes it even sadder is that Marge loves it. It would have worked, and in another timeline, the pair would have spent the rest of their lives together. This is what makes it so harrowing. The pair confess their love, and like the knight he is, Rich holds the lid shut to protect her from being able to get out. When I'm not crying, you're crying. Part of being a knight is saving a fair maiden, and it's just a very childish way to look at things, but more adult than most of the things that we've seen in the show. The next day, we then see Marge being rescued, and Rich still sat at the fridge holding watch. His eyes are completely open, and even in death, he was making sure that nothing could get to her. It's just so sad. Over the top of this, we can also hear the song The Oath from the It soundtrack. In the first film, this is what was played when the group made their oath to return to Derry if Pennywise came back. This involved them cutting their hands open with a broken Coca-Cola bottle and then creating a blood oath. I don't think it's any coincidence as well that the music is here and Marge was also put in a Coca-Cola fridge. It's these kinds of bonds and sacrifices that made it so the Losers Club defeated Pennywise in the first place, and the things the characters do here will also echo throughout the saga. And eventually, actions like this and what Rich sacrificed will bring it down. So even though we aren't necessarily getting a happy ending, there is some good that comes from it eventually. Rich making a sacrifice like this symbolizes not only his love for Marge, but also the kinds of unbreakable friendships that we all forge at some point in our lives. And again, it's one of the most devastating deaths I've seen in the show for a long, long time. Sadly, the tragedy of the characters being kept apart is also mirrored in what happens with Mrs. Kersh. Outside, she arrives wearing her periwinkle getup and confesses to her husband that this is who she truly is. She's orchestrated this entire event to draw out Pennywise, but then realizes it's all been a lie. She too has been manipulated by the evil that is Derry. Evil appears in many forms, and for her, it wears the face of her father. Because of this, she carried out horrendous acts, but in the end, it was all for a lie. I think it's really important to remember that we can all be manipulated into doing something bad by people who appear with a friendly face. Because of this, sadly, Kersh is one of the most tragic characters in all of it. She had some happy years with her father, but he was then taken by the forces of evil, and she was then abused by her husband and longed for the man who always treated her right. In doing this though, she also carries out the evil that those who set the fire also did as well. And yet this betrayal, Rich's death, the wonder itself, the tension, everything, all executed perfectly, and yeah, one of the best scenes in a show that I've seen in forever. On a human level as well, this scene evokes the primal dread of mob violence and also betrayal. The victims are ordinary people seeking joy in a hostile world, only to be annihilated by their neighbours' hatred. The Legion's actions as well aren't portrayed as isolated hate, but simply as an extension of Derry's collective indifference. Much like how the town overlooks Pennywise's killings, we then hear reports the next day that whitewash the event, even to the point that they eulogize Stanley because it's a black bar. They paint it out as being problematic, and there's very much the sentiment of they got what they deserved, even when they use the word illegal. It's something you'll often see in society, with people blaming the victims instead of those that ruined their lives. This just adds to the scene's timeless feeling because it plays upon things that are more about us than they are about it. Pennywise doesn't need to orchestrate the fire, it simply just rides the wave of hate. It just observes and waits until humanity's worst impulses come to the surface, and sadly, throughout history, children are often the victims of adults' evil actions. Sadly, this is what we see in the scene, and so many innocent lives are lost. In a franchise filled with iconic frights like Georgie's sewer encounter, the Blackspot will endure as particularly chilling because it refuses catharsis. There's no heroic defeat of the monster here, or the group taking down the bad guys. The fire happens, lives are lost, and Pennywise goes off unscathed, as do most of those involved. However, this scene forces us to ask who the real evil is here. Is it Pennywise for capitalizing on the fire, or the ones who caused the fire itself? I think you kind of know, and what I love about this is that it shows how the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create ourselves. Ultimately, this scene's an incredible chapter in the story, and I think that it's one that will haunt me for a long time. But I hope you've enjoyed us talking about it, and if you have, please hit the thumbs up and drop a comment with all your thoughts below. If you want to follow us on Instagram as well and keep up to date with what we're doing, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos like this every single week, and if you click the join button, it's just 99 cents a month with lots of extra content. Or early at least. I get lots of complaints like, why have you paid all this forever? And it's like, I'm just giving it out to members for like 2 weeks early maybe at most. But yeah, you can have it eventually, just have it. So yeah, I know I keep getting asked this. All the members' content will go free eventually, but for the moment we just give it to those guys who are paying because they're just offering a bit more support. But yeah, it will definitely come out at some point. And I know some of you guys hate it. I apologize for that. It's just unfortunately, you know, we have overhead, staff to pay, and if we can do that, I've got to take that avenue. If you want something a bit more happy, fucking hell, I've ruined the video. But look, there's t-shirts as well at our merch store, lots of different designs, and the more you buy, the more of a discount you get. Whew, I hate selling stuff. I'm terrible at it, as you can probably tell. But yeah, thank you for all you guys' support. Even a thumbs up means the world to me, so thank you. Now, if you want something else to watch, we've got a big breakdown on screen right now of episode 7, so definitely head over there right after this. With that out of the way though, thank you for sticking through this video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.